At a time when India is deeply engaged with China over the border dispute in the Sikkim sector, here's some news that is going to be a cause of grave concern for the Indian government. According to a report published in China's Global Times, Nepal will soon get internet services from China as early as August this year. With this, Nepal's dependence on India for internet will be reduced as China is set to provide services to the Himalayan country. This could also threaten India's influence on Nepal in the long run. In 2016, for the first time, Nepal's state-owned telecom company, Nepal Telecom and China Telecom Global had signed an agreement in Hong Kong on providing internet protocol service between the two countries through cross-border terrestrial cable route. As of now, Nepal has access to internet service only through Indian route. Nepal's Daily Republica had also reported earlier this month that the country will begin to get Chinese internet connection from August. According to the Chinese Daily Report, this is said to be a great boon to the South Asian country, which is still rebuilding its shattered economy and infrastructure after a devastating earthquake in 2015, unquote. Now, this, however, isn't a surprise development. As we mentioned last year, in June, Chinese media did report that China and Nepal were connected with an optical fiber network through Tibet for provision of high-speed internet services, which would reduce the Himalayan country's dependence on India. Well, but what does this broadband diplomacy mean for India? China's broadband diplomacy in Nepal might be a reason for worry for India. While Nepal's growing options for internet services will make the Indian service providers dejected, the Global Times report called the Indian connection slow yet expensive. Then there are other factors as well. First, the high-speed connection from China will bolster Nepal's internet infrastructure, especially after the 2015 earthquake, leading to economic betterment. Secondly, it will connect Nepal to a bigger digital world, which in turn could make it more independent. The Chinese smartphones have already made a steady market in Nepal, and with the combination of the internet services from the same country, it opens up opportunities for Nepal to make use of the new age global economy, of which smartphones and internet are two very important components. Let's talk about this. I have with me here in the studio Ambassador Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, former diplomat, and he's here because he has served as the Indian ambassador to Nepal and he understands how things work over there. Sir, thanks so much for joining us here. How do you see this development? Are we certain now that India's monopoly, the internet monopoly, with this is over in Nepal? And what does this mean?
Well, if you know this report, the agreement between Nepal and China, as you mentioned in your report, goes back to 2016. And frankly, I don't see any aspect of worry for India in this. Firstly, the bottom line is that Nepal is a sovereign country and has every right to transact business with whoever it wants.
Right.
So that's point number one, a very basic point. In terms of ending our monopoly, let me tell you, there is a feeling in India and incidentally in quarters in Nepal that India is constantly worried that others, particularly China, will horn in on its monopoly in various sectors in Nepal. Nothing could be further from the truth. Certainly, geopolitically, our relationship with Nepal, Nepal's policies are important to India in terms of the impact it has on our security. For instance, if there is agitation or an unstable situation in the Terai next to our open, because the border is open, we express our concern and so on. Everybody knows that. But we've never ever stood in the way of Nepal using its position as a sovereign nation to do business with whoever it wants.
Right.
This is one such case. The penetration of Chinese smartphones in Nepal is probably less than the penetration of Chinese smartphones in India.
Right.
So I don't think that matters, one way or the other.
But India, let me just get in a few words here. India has been engaged, after the earthquake, it has helped Nepal as well. But do you think India has lost this opportunity of providing internet connection? Because clearly the internet connection speed was not up to the mark. It was perhaps a little more expensive. And Chinese in that terms definitely have a better technology, and which gives them an edge, to come in and have that sort of...
I doubt it on both counts. I doubt if the Chinese have better technology. The Nepal market, as the Indian market, as the rest of the world market, are full of Chinese goods which range from excellent to shoddy.
Right.
There are any number of cases of you know, Chinese supplies to other countries. I know Africa, for instance, which are by world standards substandard. The internet, if it is indeed the case that the Chinese internet quality would be better than the ones that India has provided to Nepal so far, then I would congratulate the Nepal government on going ahead and getting a superior quality service. And why not? Frankly, the internet service I get in Delhi is not much to write home about. Having said that, as an aside, the sort of publicity that's being given to this in Nepal, as well as in the Chinese media, has a different aspect to it. I mean, the Nepali polity has always tried to, occasionally, it's gone up and down, play the China card whenever it gets, whenever there's a section that has been brainwashed over the years through, you know, the 250 years of the monarchy and Rana rule, into blaming Big Brother India for whatever ills are there in Nepal because of their own incompetence or corruption or whatever. That's something we are used to. It happens all the time. It happens even today. And one of the things that, starting from Mahindra's time particularly, that Nepalese governments have done on and off is to use the China factor to, you know, pinprick India.
So do you think,
subordinate, you know, buttress their nationalism?
It's not such a big deal, but does then India need a counter strategy perhaps? Because if you look at the investments that the Chinese are putting in Nepal, $8.3 billion, India has about $315 to $16 million in Nepal in terms of investment.
There you are right. What has happened is, let's face, you know, the fact is that Nepal is important to us in terms of our strategic security. It's a state, you know, between a giant northern neighbor and a giant southern neighbor. What happens in Nepal affects our border states, and there is no doubt that should the soil of Nepal be used for activities which are inimical to India, it is of worry to us. That is one thing we want to prevent. For a long time, China, while its economic presence increased in Nepal, because, you know, China is a country with enormous economic muscle, it kept a low profile. It worked with whoever was in power. It worked with the king. It was seen as pro-king and was pro-king. When the king was ousted, it started working very nimbly with the political parties. But recently, it is true, the Chinese profile in Nepal has been raised deliberately and aggressively, and it has taken on political overtones as well, which wasn't the case before. In fact, the Chinese have openly supported, for instance, one political party grouping against another when they tried to shore up the KPS-OLI government, which they never did before. Even if they did do those things, that was very much behind the scenes. Their constant offers of aid, a big package for Lumbini, and so on and so forth, are much more aggressive than before. And therefore, that is certainly a factor we have to keep in mind. What we cannot do is tell Nepal, no, we have a veto power on your foreign policy towards China, because but we can engage with a country with whom we've had excellent relations, really, bottom line, politically and connected socially and in every way. That we should actually continue our policy at the moment of respecting Nepal's sovereignty, working with them in every way, but engaging with them to point out to them, which they understand very well, that Nepali soil should not be used for activities that are anti-Indian.
You've made a couple of very crucial points over there, but coming back to the question of internet, you know, everything is driven through internet today, and when it comes to China getting into Nepal, would there be an issue with, let's say, the data, the Nepalese data, because everything will be, many experts would say, would be, you know, accessible to China? That could be of strategic concern.
I mean, if China wants to access data from Nepal on Nepali activities, they're most welcome. Nepal is, by the way, a very open society. I don't see where our security interests are involved, or where we have you know, used Nepal as a sink or a repository of information on India, which we don't want the Chinese to get. I think that's very far-fetched. I think I would look upon this as Nepal by economic logic, trying to end a monopoly, let's say, that India has,
and which
is with a slightly greater enthusiasm because they can, thumb their nose at India a bit.
Right. All right. And also moving towards a path of progress. Well, we'll have to wait and watch how China's role as far as getting into this internet space in Nepal pans out. But as you're saying, not a big cause for worry for India at this point. Well, with that, I'd like to thank you, Ambassador Mukherjee, for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us here on the show. Time for us to slip into a short break. News and updates continue right here on WION. This is me, Sana Khan, signing off.